So one of the ways that I see this light and dark separated is just a real fixation on not only spiritual bypassing sometimes, but a fixation with what I call sunshining. Let's keep it light. Let's keep it positive. Let's get somewhere better. Let's keep the party going. And embodiment, and each of you can reflect on this for your own self, allows you the freedom and the relief of getting to experience oneness through every season that life contains. So, of course, I mean not just summer, but winter, spring, and the letting go of autumn, not just the domain of daylight, what we already know and are familiar, easy to maintain ego place, but nighttime, the mystery, when we find ourselves in the dark sea of absolute unknown, that we can rest in presence, openness, and equanimity, and absolute oneness with each of those expressions of life. People with me? So through, of course, spiritual bypassing and also spiritual materialism, yeah, this tendency to want to perceive practice as just those good feeling, blissful moments that we get, using practice to attain these brief blissful moments instead of to actually wake up, to remember what's possible for us, to remember who we are. We sometimes, and this is for each person to look within your own self, find ways to justify sort of little sticky, tricky, sometimes fooling our own selves even, ways that we justify avoiding taking responsibility. So taking responsibility through the habit of sunshining, okay, tends to be defined as something that weighs heavy, a burden. If I want to stay at the ongoing party of life, if I want to continue sunshining rather than be aware that consciousness is not always pretty, contains everything, all of it, the entire spectrum of light and dark. A huge part of our practice is being willing to take responsibility moment by moment for our own remembering. I can say our own liberation, I can say our own awakening, but I'm going to say remembering, our own remembering of who and what we actually are, and to then act through that, which means to act on behalf of consciousness itself. So what's beautiful is we can each watch our own internal justifications of, but taking responsibility in this particular moment isn't what I want, or taking responsibility in this moment isn't particularly convenient. Or let's look collectively at something like climate change. We've known at least since the 1970s about climate change and the global ramifications of this. But for how many decades have we witnessed a collective lack of taking responsibility? Is that equally astounding to all of you as it continually is to me? It's astounding. I found it astounding since I was a teenager. It's astounding. And so I think it's a really, to be honest, invigorating place and practice to look at every day our relationship with taking responsibility, and to realize how through this duality of light and dark, we've misconstrued perhaps what responsibility actually is. When we step back into we consciousness, when we step back into this embodiment of knowing experientially our oneness with all of life, then moment by moment, there's a natural, beautiful, innate desire to act on behalf of life. Sometimes this operates in little ways. Oh, here's what's arising in this moment because I'm paying attention to steward the garden that is mine to steward. Here's what's arising in this moment as care for the space that I live in, or for the person who's right in front of me, because I'm paying attention. Sometimes we get lost instead in the large story of, in the bigger picture as a concept, what is the next way I want to take responsibility, or what is the next way I want to be of service, forgetting that service happens in the here and now, in this moment. And so I invite everyone to just gently and rather playfully notice where you take responsibility and understand it as a joyful expression, a natural expression. Sometimes that means invoking the difficult or tender or confronting conversation that your heart dictates has to be had. Sometimes it means that it's your turn to scrub the kitchen clean and to do so with love rather than with any story that says, oh, I wish someone else would take out the trash. So I'm just curious for you to kind of investigate within it what your own relationship is with this, taking responsibility. Sometimes taking responsibility means connecting with the joy stream of life more fully because we are entertaining through the story of separation some rigidity. Okay, so it can be so nuanced, this practice, but it's really about letting yourself rest in the question of not the ego or separate self notion of what should I be doing to be of service more, but when I'm really present and here in this moment, because the information comes through in the moment. What is mine to take responsibility for right now? Yeah. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm reminded of what a big part of Zen practice doing the chores is, and doing the chores with joy, with care and attention. So that the monastery where I trained to be given the job of cleaning the outhouses was considered something for those who were deeper in practice. Yeah. And it's counterintuitive because the ego says that's not the way I want to take responsibility. So just pause and notice what's arising for you in this moment. And reflect, please, for a minute on all the ways that you are taking responsibility. We spoke last week of the Suzuki Roshi quote about just shining your own corner. And this is an extension to that conversation. The last reflection I want to share about this, because I find it fascinating, is that through hierarchical perception and this duality of light versus dark, we love when we get conceptual about service and responsibility instead of in the moment with it, in the now, where it's really just about being part of the flow of life and joyfully participating in that flow. We like to police in the name of taking responsibility. We like to police ourselves. Are you doing enough? Are you not doing enough? We love to police others. Raise your hand if you've ever watched your ego do this in the name of consciousness or practice even. I've seen it done in many spiritual practice centers, in fact, misunderstanding of what paying attention means. That instead of compassionate awareness, it becomes a form of policing.